My name's Anna, 24 years old. I've just started working in a small firm in San Francisco. My job was a customer service representative. I lived alone in my apartment some 20 minutes away from my work. My boyfriend lived in that same city as I was, but due to our conflicting schedules, we could only see each other on weekends. My first week in the new company was pretty uneventful. Everything was good. In my office, I met my two newest colleagues, Alice and Oliver. They're pretty nice, friendly, and generous. On the last weekday, we decided to have a night out after finishing the weekly workload. Alice told me that it's to celebrate my first week in the office, so needless to say, I couldn't say no to that. Even if I did have a plan with my boyfriend already, so I told him about that and had to readjust our own plan for the weekend. After work, we arrived to a nightclub not far from our workplace. To be honest, I hated being here. The music was too loud that we literally need to scream just to say anything. Also, the flashing lights were very discomfortingly annoying. That's just me and my feeling. Though I know that bars and clubs were a rather popular destination, but I think it wasn't for me. I didn't remember for how long I was there. The cocktails was surely no friend with my empty stomach. "I don't feel so good, guys," I told Alice and Oliver. The two colleagues happily left with me, even though I knew clearly that they still wanted to have more fun. Leaving the bar, all I wanted to do was to go home. Yet Oliver had another proposal. "We haven't got dinner yet, right?" He then suggested a restaurant that specialized in foie gras. Alice immediately voted for it excitedly. I, however, upon checking the time, wondering what restaurant was still open at 10 p.m. "That restaurant serves overnight, gal," he said. Two of them kinda dragged me into it, and there was no way for me to say no. The voyage there was kinda long and uneventful. It was the constant nagging of a hungry Alice pushing Oliver to drive faster. And me, I was just too tired to say anything. I just wanted to get over it quickly so I could go to bed. It's exactly midnight when Oliver stopped his ride in front of a small restaurant deep in the back alleys. A gentleman greeted us on our way. He introduced himself as Joey, a jack of all trade for this small establishment. Interesting. The restaurant was kinda neat, though the three of us were the only customers here. After settling down, Oliver asked for the restaurant's signature dish, while Alice was busy with choosing the beverage section. Two of them continued with their usual office gossip. Alice, since she wouldn't be driving, enjoyed her drink, while I was at my limit for alcohol consumption today. My phone rang. It was my boyfriend calling me. I went outside the restaurant for some privacy. My boyfriend was pretty worried, wondering when I would go home and whether I needed a ride. Talking with him, feeling his care, filled me with joy. Then I darted my eyes around, seeing a girl dressed in white sitting across the alleyway. Saying goodbye to my darling, I came over to check on her. She kept staring into the green shrub. Her eyes widened worriedly. "Are you all right, miss?" I asked. I'm looking for something of mine." Her voice was somewhat odd. It was very quiet, with a hint of a slight echo. I asked her whether she needed my help finding it, and she declined, saying she's going to find it soon. Seeing I was not needed, I said goodbye to her and went back inside. By the time I returned, Oliver and Alice was kinda tipsy. "What's a handsome boss like you doing here all alone?" Alice, inebriated, made a joke toward the restaurant owner. "Well, I had a few other female staff, but recently they'd left without any solid reasons, and I am still looking for their replacement. You see, I only hire female staffs." His answer made Alice laugh. She clearly enjoyed the conversation. "Well, I'm Alice, and is there any vacancy here for me?" You're quite alright, Alice, but your friend seems to be a better candidate. The man then glanced at me, lowering down the dish on the table. His smirk gave me the creeps. I shuddered at that glance. Oliver laughed at the scene as if he had sensed my uneasiness. Seeing my hands were not very clean, I went to the bathroom to wash it before the meal. There, I suddenly heard a woman, seemed like she was crying. "Who's there? Is everything okay?" In the stall was a young girl, turning her back on me, burying her face into her hands, crying a lot. It seemed that she's wearing a waitress uniform of this restaurant. "Is everything okay, miss?" Hearing me, she stopped crying, then slowly turned around to me. Suddenly, she lifted her face up, arms stretched toward me. Startled by her sudden movement, I quickly turned from surprise to terror once seeing her face up close. Her face was torn to pieces, with exposed flesh hanging open everywhere, and her eye sockets were empty. All over her body, there was crimson red fluid soaking through the clothes. "Bring it back to me! Bring it back!" She tried to reach to me, crying in pain. I quickly booked out of the restroom, rushed over to my 2 coworkers. I told them what happened, yet they were not buying it. When the 3 of us arrived at the scene, the woman was nowhere to be found. Alice and Oliver laughed out loud, telling me that I've drunken too much tonight. But I wasn't drunk at all. To be fair, I was more sober than the 2 of them. Back to our table, we didn't see the owner there anymore. Alice told me to quickly eat up to leave this establishment. But as soon as I sat down on the table, I felt unease from a staring woman on another table. This was the white outfit woman I saw outside earlier. "Have you found it yet?" I asked. "Almost there," she answered. "What happened, Anna? Who are you talking to?" Oliver, eyebrows raised, opened up to me. I told him that I had seen that woman a while ago, and now she's in the diner with us. Alice and Oliver laughed, claiming that I was joking around because there's nobody there. But I swore that she was still there, still staring at me across the diner. "I have found it! That's my liver!" The woman, crying out loud, pointed her finger into the piece of meat on my dish. Her words frightened me to the point that I literally dropped the dish off the table. Alice and Oliver was dumbfounded by what happened. They could only look at me worryingly. At the same time, the tattered woman from the restroom came over crying, "Give me back my body!" Both women rushed into me, yelling out a blood-curdling scream. That's it. My flight response overwhelmed me. I screamed and did all that I could to get out of that damned restaurant. A taxi flashing its headlight toward me when I was trying to run away. In my head, all the frightening scenes crashed back before it all turned to darkness. When I came to my senses, I was in the hospital with my worried boyfriend and 2 concerned colleagues. When asked about what happened there at the restaurant, I said nothing. I just wanted to forget all those scary things. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital. It was when I heard from Oliver that the restaurant owner had recently passed away. His body was discovered to be disemboweled, with all internal organs being forcefully removed. The only evidence they found at the scene was a chef knife that only had his fingerprints on it. Maybe I was the only person knowing what terrible thing had happened there to the female staffs. And you know what? I think he deserved it. My name's Lewis, 27 years old. I graduated from University of California, Berkeley, majoring in museum collections and studies. A few months ago, I was transferred to work in the Smithsonian, one of the most well-known museums in the United States. Since I would be working in R&D here, I felt pretty excited about it. On my first day of work, I decided to have a walk around the museum, seeing the vast collection of it. I happened to come across Fiona, an employee who was the same age as mine, with 1 year experience. She also shared the same position as I was. We got to know each other and quickly felt like a good match. Fiona showed me around the place, introducing the artifacts along the way. To be honest, I wasn't paying much attention to the things she said. I was more attracted to her joyous face and those beautiful brown eyes. A few minutes later, we're given tasks by administration to receive the latest artifacts just arriving this morning. Fiona took me to the artifact collection room. In this room, there's a lot of very, very precious artifacts of huge historical value, requiring great care and handling. Fiona would run through the initial inspection while I did the note-taking for categorization. The last artifact we received was a wooden cube with strange marking on the surface. Each side measured about 1.3 feet. The object was made of wood, covered in a rather thick layer of dust. We felt kind of weird about this artifact. None of us had any information about it. On the right side, there was a rotatable metal knob. I guess it was the artifact opening mechanism, so I did turn it a bit, trying to open it. Fiona immediately voiced her concern, yet it was too late, for I had already committed. For each turn came a small click, as if you're winding up an antique music box. I was fascinated by this object, while Fiona was really spooked by this. The knobs had been turned all the way and no longer moved at all. I and Fiona attentively watched over the box. There wasn't anything happening after a few seconds. Then, suddenly, a clown jumped out from the box, followed by a sinister laughter. Startled, Fiona fell backward, which also startled me. There was a rather big clown shoved within the classic jack-in-the-box, giving out a grin, bobbing back and forth on the spring-powered mechanism. Fiona was disturbed by the laughter, in stark contrast to my fascination. The clown figure was kinda ugly. Creepy dark reflection with two big sunken dark eyes. The clown had a wide open gate, which the sinister laughter came from. To be honest, it's kinda creepy when you see it further and further. My guess was this jack-in-the-box was an antique toy, which we quickly left aside to focus onto our work. It was the first day of work. Because I want to show off a little bit with my new colleague, I stayed all the way late into the night, until both of us were exhausted by the work after tons of documentation about all the artifacts. So I decided to invite Fiona to dinner, which she declined, for her boyfriend would come to pick her up. Oh, it was a bummer. Fiona had a boyfriend already. So she left the scene first, leaving me alone with bitter disappointment. The next day I went to work early, opening the office with the jack-in-the-box right in front of my door. Okay, who left it here? Because aside from me and Fiona last night, nobody would be here ever since, huh? Fiona arrived right after that, and when I asked her about the box, she wasn't sure either. Ever since we're out of the office yesterday, nobody would touch it then. After a quick inspection, we found that the box remained intact. We left it aside and dived into our work. Around lunchtime, I came to the archive room and unexpectedly, the box appeared there again. This time, I did a more careful observation of the object. There was some unintelligible marking on the box, as well as a number 0 on the top of it. This object really intrigued me. It must be someone really intrigued by it in the museum staffs that they left it all over the place like this. Suddenly, the knob rotating on itself, clicking over each knot. This startled me, frozen me on my track, glued my gaze into the strange artifact. Fiona then called my name from afar and snapped me out of my trance. The box suddenly stopped turning on its own, too. Fiona asked me why I was idling for such a long time. I answered back with my experience and questions about the mysterious box. She put that aside immediately, telling me about the incoming expo. We would have a lot of work to do. The mysterious box was an unnecessary distraction. I left. Nonetheless, questions about the box ringing within my head. That day, we finished our work very late. Yet we're contented. We'd made good preparation for the incoming exhibition. So needless to say, our frustration when we arrived to work the next day. Everything we'd prepared was now all over the place, some heavily damaged with blood running all over. In the corner was a body of a robust man, wearing dark clothes with a black color balaclava that was now torn heavily from his badly bruised and lacerated body. On his neck was a bite mark that was too wide and deep. The bite mark clearly wasn't of human origin. The police arrived quickly, cordoned off the crime scene, and we had no other choice but to cancel the exhibition. The museum suffered heavily due to many precious artifacts suffering irreparable damage. A quick investigation told us that the dead man was indeed a museum thief. Cause of death was announced to be heavy exsanguination, yet the evidence toward the perpetrator was nowhere to be found. The police kept every one of us round up for investigation. The days afterward were hell. None of us, me and Fiona including, could have enjoyed the atmosphere here. And the creepy things didn't stop there. Another day, our project manager also disappeared. He hadn't been around for many days now. Also, no traces of him running away were discovered. I had just been working for half a month, but many bad things had been going on here already. One late night, when I was walking across the hallway to go home, suddenly I spotted something down in the darkness. Attentively listening, I immediately recognized it to be the Jack-in-the-Box. I wasn't wrong. It was right there, down the hallway. I suddenly felt something wasn't right about this artifact. Carefully picked it up. I could feel the knob automatically turning. The sensation made the hair on my back puff up. Even weirder, I could see the number on it slowly turning into number 2. Suddenly, over the dark corridor, there appeared a dark shadow, which seemed to be a man, a very tall man, dressed up in raggedly strange clothes. I stopped dead on my track in a sudden dread, before slowly regaining my composure, getting closer, and yelling out to see who that person was. A loud, crazy laughter echoed from the dark corridor, hit me like a truck, prompted me to drop the box onto the floor. The laughter was exactly like the one from the Jack-in-the-Box. I was frozen in dead, unable to move any muscles. On the other side, as soon as Fiona called out for me, the shadow and the creepy laughter disappeared. Instead, it was her silhouette appearing on the wall. Everything happened way too fast for me to know what happened. I wasn't sure if it was real or just all my imagination. So I decided not to tell Fiona what had happened. But I told her that I was going to put the Jack-in-the-Box aside to archive room and head home soon. When I headed for home, Fiona was there waiting for her boyfriend. The next morning, Fiona didn't go to work. I was shocked when I was told that Fiona had been admitted to the ER last night. When I came to visit, Fiona was in a deep coma with countless wounds on her body. On her neck was a similar bite mark to that dead museum thief. Her boyfriend told me when he came to pick her up, he heard a call for help and some crazy laughter in the dark. When he found her, she was already in a deep shock, blood covered all over her body. I came back to work with a lot of thoughts in my head. First thing first, I needed to test my theory, so I brought out the box, seeing the number lingering between 2 and 3. So if Fiona completely passed away from the assault, the number would completely turn to 3? I decided to turn the box's knob, prompting the creepy figure to pop out, which I looked at closely, trying to figure out what it truly was. Later this afternoon, the police discovered the body of our project manager on the rooftop of the museum complex. He died due to the combination of blood loss and similar wounds, just like Fiona and the thief. Also, at the same day, a man with a lot of wounds and healing scars came forward to meet me. He confessed to be the second thief of that night and luckily survived the attack. He wanted me to discuss a few things. I took him into my office under the escort of the police. The man could no longer exude his emotion after the badly mauled face, yet I could read the fear, the terror within his eyes. His name's Owen, and the other thief who couldn't make it was Gary. That night, they planned the heist meticulously, and Gary, upon seeing the box, put it into the trophy bag. It was almost perfect, until suddenly, the creepy laughter came together with the sound of a winding knob. Owen could clearly remember the giant of a man, dressed up in an ancient outfit of a clown, a jester, attacking both of them. He was supposed to be another victim, but he fought tooth and nail to escape death. Owen lifted up his sleeve, showing up a giant bite mark, still bloodied, and had no time to heal yet. I knew Owen came to me due to the fact that I was the only one who would believe him. As we were exchanging our words, suddenly, the jester's creepy laugh echoed from the dark corner. We turned around and were greeted with the sight of the Jack-in-the-Box. Okay, how the hell did that thing come here without any of us noticing? The terror-induced clown stood looking at us, twisted and turned its body side to side as if taunting us. Do you think that Lewis and Owen could have escaped the attack of the clown? What would happen to Fiona? Let's discuss in the comments section below. I'm Jason, and these are my two hands without fingers. This is the most painful and terrifying experience I've ever had. 10 years ago, I was a sophomore at the University of California, San Diego. I spent my free time working as a freelance deliverer. The job was risky, but it offered flexible hours and helped me cover my living expenses. Occasionally, I'd receive extra tips, which always made me excited. I'd been doing this job for nearly a year when that fateful night occurred. On that day, I didn't go to work. Instead, I spent time working on a presentation for the end of a course. I forgot to update my account on the order receiving website to not accepting orders. Around 10 p.m., my account received a notification about a delivery order. Before I could read all the details, my phone rang unexpectedly from an unknown number. I answered, and on the other end was a woman who wanted me to deliver the package to the specified address by midnight. She emphasized that it was 12 midnight and instructed me to be punctual. Before I could respond, the call ended abruptly. Right after that, the delivery fee was transferred to my account. Seeing the amount, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was 10 times more than my usual orders. Immediately, I forgot about the importance of my presentation. I rushed from my dorm to the location where the orders were gathered. On the package, there was an address and a phone number, but no recipient name. I started the delivery at 10:30 p.m. It was an old but spacious house tucked away in a narrow alley. Checking my watch, it was 11:57, and I stood at the door, ready and alert, not daring to waste a single second. As the clock struck midnight, I immediately rang the doorbell. But before the bell stopped ringing, the door of the house swung open. From inside, an elderly woman stepped out, looking at me with indifferent eyes. She was tall, but her skin was wrinkled and dark, with high cheekbones and sunken features, and her hair was disheveled, some parts long, some short. I politely greeted her and handed her the package. When I presented the delivery slip and asked her to sign to confirm the receipt of the package, she hesitated. Instead of signing, she stared at my hand for a moment before speaking in a deep, hoarse voice that startled me slightly.
Would you stay for dinner with me? I'm terribly sorry, ma'am, but Without letting me finish, she handed me $100, saying it was a tip. She promised to pay more if I agreed to have dinner with her and assured me it would only take 20 minutes. I agreed, feeling a bit crazy, but that's what I did at the time. I thought she might be very lonely and in need of companionship. Plus, it wouldn't take much time, and I could go home and continue preparing for tomorrow's presentation. Stepping into the house, everything was rather old but clean and orderly. She invited me to sit at the dining table, where food and utensils were already prepared for two. She went into the kitchen to get something. Wanting to break the silence, I asked her name. Adela, came the short, indifferent reply. I tried asking a few more questions, but she didn't respond, so I fell silent. A moment later, she emerged, placing a pair of scissors and a gun on the table. I was both surprised and puzzled why dinner would require a gun. Adela placed the package on the table and used the scissors to open it. As soon as the last strip of tape was cut and the box was opened, I felt a horrifying regret for agreeing to dinner with her. The package I had delivered turned out to contain human fingers. Adela poured the blood-stained fingers onto her plate and mine. A chill ran down my spine. My skin crawled and my mind reeled in shock. I was too stunned to speak. Adela gripped the gun tightly and began devouring the fingers voraciously. She looked at me and ordered me to eat. Trembling, I lifted the fork and stabbed at a piece of salad near the fingers. I forced a bite of salad into my mouth, suppressing my urge to retch. The metallic stench of blood overwhelmed me, causing my head to spin. I gagged and clamped my mouth shut, sitting in silence as I watched the terrifying woman devour the fingers on the plate. My body was drenched in sweat, shivering uncontrollably, every cell in me trembling. Adela took a tissue to wipe the blood from her mouth just as the table clock unexpectedly chimed loudly. The 20-minute dinner is over, Adela's terrifying voice echoed. She pulled out $100 and placed it on the table. Adela then initiated another transaction. She said she would pay me $100,000 if I'd let her eat all 10 of my fingers. These fingers taste too ordinary. Your fingers look tastier, she said. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. This woman was truly insane. I began to feel uneasy, fully aware of everything around me. But I couldn't control my body anymore. I sat there witnessing the whole process of that insane woman eating my fingers, one by one, without resistance, pain, or screams. I woke up in the hospital with both hands bandaged. I still couldn't control my body. The doctor informed me that all 10 fingertips had been severed. Blood tests revealed I was poisoned with a toxin that rendered my body in a paralyzed state beyond control. A passerby found me in a dire condition by the roadside and brought me to the hospital. As for Adela, she was found dead in that house, choked on bone fragments lodged in her throat. She was infected with a virus that affected her brain and nervous system due to cannibalism. I abandoned my studies and lost a bright future ahead of me. If only I hadn't been consumed by greed and curiosity. I wish I could forget the horrifying images of that night forever.